Hello and welcome back, everyone. It's just another day in the life as a military wife, and we are continuing on this week with our series about veterans. And I just want to say thank you so much for the kind comments and feedback I've been receiving in regards to these episodes. It means so much to the veteran community to be able to feel like they are being listened to and their concerns are important to others. So please, as we're going through and doing these interviews, reach out and make sure that if there are any veterans in your life, that they understand they are not alone and they are appreciated. That said, as always, I am your host, Sam Wolf, and you're listening to Life of a Military Wife. Okay, George, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself to my audience?
Hello, everyone. I am Sergeant Moran, retired. I'm a father of four, married for 14 years now. Is it 14 years? I believe it's 14 years now. We just celebrated our 14th anniversary. I am here just to kind of converse with everybody and answer any questions that they may have.
Okay, so when did you get into the military and what was your MOS? What job did you do in the military?
So my job, I was a 15 Papa Aviation Operations Specialist in the military. I joined in November of 2012. Attended Fort Jackson, South Carolina for basic training, and then Fort Rucker, Alabama for AIT. And then after that, I transitioned into CID, where I did that for a while, but then I transferred back into 15 Papa because of medical conditions, and then eventually got out.
So for those who are not very familiar with 15 Papas, explain what you did as a 15 Papa.
So 15 Papa, I like to refer to as the Swiss Army knife of the aviation community, because we do a little bit of everything and a lot of nothing. So it's a career field where you can, but majority of the time it's flight tracking. Any aircraft that goes up and that you are in control of, you are responsible for monitoring radio traffic, locations, crew status, everything like that, as well as maintaining proper FAA paperwork and Army paperwork for the individual crews. And then during downrange deployments and stuff like that, you can also be cross-trained as door gunners, as a little bit of mechanics for the crew chief's assistants, which is what I did when I was deployed. They showed me how to take off blades and do things like that. So I suspect I could be more of a help to them. So you do a little bit of everything because you are basically a Swiss Army knife of the aviation community. Like I said, I like to put it.
And correct me, you worked for a dust off or a medevac unit at one point, correct?
Correct. I was part of the 101st 6th Battalion Charlie Company, which is the medevac unit. And I was part of there. And then when I transferred out and was stationed at an upstate New York, I was part of the 10th Mountain Attack Battalion. So I was also part of the Apache unit as well up there.
Okay. How often did you deploy? What did you do on deployments? Any stories you want to share from that?
Well, I've been overseas twice, one into a non-combat zone and one to a combat zone. The first time I was overseas was in South Korea, which was straight out of AIT. And that's where I was cross-trained how to be a door gunner, because they decided, hey, we just need people. So they came to me, hey, Private Moran, would you like to shoot a gun out of a helicopter? And of course, being young me, I was like, yes, I would. So I did some cross training there, which is also where I sustained my first injury. I'll get to that later. And a lot of flight tracking. So a lot of people don't know that we have fixed wing and rotary wing in the Army. The fixed wings are more of our spooky spook people, I like to call them. A lot of missions that we can't really talk about or say or what they do, or they can't tell us anyway, but we still have to track them. And then When I was deployed overseas to Afghanistan, I was what they call the guardian angel. Basically, what it was an extra body on the dust off missions that were high risk to just provide basically another body, a guard for the bird as we were approaching the LZ. It was mainly used for if they were either A, under fire, or B, if we had to take on Afghani personnel into the bird because they didn't know who you were, what you were. You know, you could have turned on us at any moment. So they wanted somebody there dedicated to just the protection of the bird, while the medics did their stuff and the crew chiefs did their stuff.
Would you typically carry a weapon when you did that?
Yes, we typically carried our sidearms as well as our M4s, which was our primary weapon. And yeah, and then our sidearms were M9s. And so we did carry while we were doing that because we had to ensure the safety of the bird. And when we came under fire, then we had to also provide suppressive fire to make sure that everybody was there as well. The primary duty of the crew chief is the protection of the bird, but there's only one on a mission. So they wanted an extra person there as another gun to assist the crew chief if something like that were to happen.
So were you ever under attack? Like, did that ever happen?
There was one incident that did happen. I didn't realize I didn't realize how many rounds I'd fired until I got back to base. So because it all happened so fast. But I will explain the situation. We were approaching the LZ. We were on a two bird mission. Chalk 1 and Chalk 2 were coming in. For those of you that don't know, Chalks are the code names for the aircraft in succession. So Chalk 1 is the lead bird. Chalk 2 is the follow bird that comes up after. So Chalk 1 goes down, well, not goes down, but lands, takes on the packs that need to be medevaced out. I forgot how many. I think there was about 3 at the time. And as Chalk 1 was lifting off, we were approaching, but we heard on the radio that, hey, they ground evac'd the other people that needed to be ground evac'd. The whole reason I was there was because we were told that Afghani personnel were going to be dusted off as well, but they actually wound up ground evacing those personnel out someplace else. So all we did was take on American personnel. So as we were coming in, we were told, hey, don't land, peel off. So we did. And as we were coming up, I looked down, there was if you've ever been to Afghanistan, you know or actually anywhere in the Middle East, you know that there's tons of Adobe style walls everywhere. So this one was half down. And as I look, I just see the silhouette of a guy come out with an RPG, and I yell RPG. And the pilot heard me. He took action as the RPG just barely misses our rotor blades. And as he's coming in, as he fires, I'm looking straight down at him, and I start firing my M4. In my mind, it was so fast. I thought I only fired twice, maybe 3 times. But later on, when I got back to base and I actually, had to do the download of my equipment, I wound up counting my ammo, and I wound up firing 17 times. so,
Yeah, adrenaline can affect things.
It can. And a lot of people don't realize like how fast stuff actually happens until they're in it. And like I said, I thought I had only fired about 2 or 3 times, but it turned out to be 17 because I was just going at it. I don't know if I hit him. I don't know if all I know is that I saw the dust from the wall. He went behind the wall and never came back out again. So.
Okay. Well, yeah. Hey, at least you stopped shooting, so you're good.
Yeah, I was happy about that.
Yeah, that's the goal. The goal is to get them to stop shooting.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. So here's just a random question that I haven't asked others, but I kind of already know the answer to this one. How much, because you can't always tell these things right away. How long did you typically wait to tell family these stories, or did you just kind of forget to tell them and then they just randomly come up sometimes?
It's kind of hard because at first I was reluctant to tell anybody these stories. Like a lot of things that happen, my family still doesn't know. And they probably won't ever know because they can't experience it. I tell some of my veteran buddies these stories and they can kind of relate. So it's a little bit better for them. But as far as my family was concerned, I think I told this particular story probably about 2 years after it happened. At first, because I was reluctant to say anything because I didn't want to scare my wife. um, and I didn't want to scare my family saying, like, hey, this is happening. And then eventually I just forgot to tell them. I didn't forget the story, but I just forgot to tell them. And it just never came up until one day I was talking to somebody. I can't remember who exactly I was talking to. And it came up in conversation. He was a fellow veteran. And well, at the time, he was a fellow service member. I think he was our neighbor. And my wife just happened to hear me and say, "What? You never told me this," and wound up telling her the story. So
We've experienced that too. And I think it's that exact same thing. Initially, you don't want to tell them right away because you don't want them to worry. And then
mhm.
later you just let it go. Okay, so why did you end up transitioning from active duty military medic? I know it was partly medical, but can you explain more?
Yeah. So, like I was saying before, I sustained several injuries, one in Korea, and then one in deploy. Actually, two in Korea, one in deployment, and so three altogether, which really cemented my reason to leave the military, my medical reason to leave the military. The first incident happened when I was doing my door gunner training in Korea. I got attached with a new pilot, as new pilots are not always the best straight out of flight school. It's as your husband knows, I pilots are usually not the best. So this pilot didn't do his safety checks when I was doing my door gunner training, and he wound up basically I fell out of the helicopter from about 15 to 20 feet. And I wound up sustaining concussion, several injuries. Later on, I found out that my back, the bottom three vertebrae of my spine are cracked. I didn't realize that at the time. So I just continued on, just charging on every day. And then later on, we were doing a field training exercise. And as your husband knows, drash generators are quite big and quite strong in far as generating power. I realized that firsthand when I was grounding one. So you take a metal copper rod that's attached to the generator, you pound it into the ground to ground it in case of any surges. Well, a new private jumped on. You're not supposed to touch the generator to turn it on while somebody's grounding the generator. That's the whole point. A new private jumped on, turned it on, and sent a surge right through me. Next thing I know, I'm waking up on the ground going, what just happened? So again, I got taken back to the hospital, checked out, evaluated. I got put on light duty for a couple weeks and good to go. At least I think I am. And the third incident happened when I was in Afghanistan. We were doing a mission where we were clearing out some insurgent training camps down towards the Pakistan border. The first and only ground convoy I'd ever been in actual combat and was ever in, got hit by an IED and or not got hit by basically a roadside bomb and flipped my Humvee over. And you ever feel like you're in a washing machine? Have that happen to you, because that was something different. It wound up flipping my Humvee and my LMTV over. Well, the LMTV, I was in the Humvee in front of the LMTV. The IED went off right in between the two vehicles, so it wound up flipping my Humvee over on its left side and the LMTV over on its right side. Luckily, nobody was seriously hurt. We had a guy with a broken leg, but that's it. But we got out, posted up, and luckily nobody started shooting at us after that point. A lot of set and forget kind of bombs, so kind of indiscriminate, whatever was there. And
Yeah.
then in 2018, I want to say it was 17, 18, I was doing my CID training and come to find out that my medical conditions were preventing me from completing a lot of tasks. So I wound up transferring back into into Aviation Operations Specialist into 15 Papa. And then after several more battery of tests, found out that I had what was called injury-induced Parkinson's. Um, so after several sustained head injuries, obviously, my body
Yeah.
just decided to, not work anymore. So as a result, I have that diagnosis going on, which ultimately resulted in the Army medically retiring.
Yeah. So, okay, you're medically retired from the Army, and
Mhm.
then you go into the VA process. And this might be something that people who are not military adjacent or whatever understand. What is that process like of being military retired and trying to get a VA assessment for your disability?
So there's two ways to do it, at least from what I understand. Apparently, there's a third way, but I'm not really 100% sure what that way is or how to do it, because that's all done outside once you're out of the Army itself or out of the military. I know that several veterans organizations help with that third process, the VFW, Wounded Warriors, things like that. So several veterans groups do help facilitate VA ratings. So I encourage anybody to use those if you're considering doing a VA rating process and you don't know what to do. Go see your local VFW chapter, your Wounded Warrior, whatever, Foreign Legion, because they will help you. But the initial process for me was one of two ways. You could either stay in your unit, do your job while you're doing the what they call the offboarding process, and the offboarding process includes VA ratings. Now, I didn't do that part. I did what they called the medical path, which is I got transitioned into a medical unit where it was a cannot remember the name of the unit actually, but it was basically a unit dedicated for wounded soldiers and soldiers that needed to have medical conditions addressed. They're either recovering from a medical injury, they're getting out. So that was the whole point of this unit, was just to facilitate wounded soldiers or soldiers getting out of the military. And so their job. So I maintained a VA process through that unit.
Okay. And so
I think that answered your
now that
question, but I
you're
think I went off on a tangent there.
That's okay. Now that you're out and you've gone through this whole medical retirement, VA, you've got this disability and stuff, what has life been like for you on the outside? You've got all these medical conditions. How has that impacted you, your family?
So getting my VA rating, and I will say this to anybody that's had an injury like this, it's kind of a disheartening process because I wanted to stay in, I wanted to maintain my career in the Army. Um, so was disheartening. So I did seek counseling as a result of that, just because I wanted to maintain like some semblance of normalcy going out. But I highly encourage anybody to just look into yourself to be like, hey, what is it going to look like going forward? And that's what I did. Um, I wound up saying to myself, I'm not going to let this get me down. I want to pursue something going forward. So I wound up doing that. The Army paid for my bachelor's while I was in, and then the Army decided, hey, we'll pay for more of your schooling. So I wound up applying to law school, which I got accepted to, and the Army paid for it. I got out in a weird time though, because I got out in December of 2019, and everybody knows what happened a few months later. so, so when the whole lockdowns happens about 3 months or 4 months after I got out, it really hindered me from getting a job. It really prevented me from really cementing myself in the civilian sector for a good long time. Um, so I don't want to say my experience is unique in that process, but it was a different process than most veterans that I've talked to face, because they get out and they already have a job lined up. They do these things. And while I did have a job lined up, it wound up falling through because of the lockdowns. So it was a bit of a struggle. But with the VA rating, it actually helped me to maintain a comfortable living for my family. because I was at the time I got out, the VA rated me at 90%, which for those of you that are going to go through the VA rating process, they will rate you in percentages, 10, 20, 30, and then all the way up to 100%. The higher your rating, the higher your possibilities of getting assistance from the VA is, or the more assistance you get from the VA. So at 90%, it's pretty much topped out, which allowed me to, which allowed the COVID process to not really hit me as much. But to law school, and I have, lockdowns happened. I'm actually working for my local county and utilizing my degree, so it's really good.
So, talking to some of the other veterans, they've talked about how they've found community or how they've found a sense of stability post-military. What has that looked like for you? What's the adjustment process going from the military community to being a civilian again looked like?
It was a hard process. I'm not going to say it wasn't easy, because I'm, as your husband and you are very well aware, the military is very regimented. You're here at this time, you're doing this at this time, you leave when the job's done. So getting that down was hard, because I was used to getting the job done no matter how late I stayed. So, but now looking into the community, I am. So I'm going to plug my church in there, if you don't mind.
That's fine.
So um, I am Catholic, and as a result of that, I did join the Knights of Columbus, which is a Catholic organization mainly for men. Actually, it's strictly for men. They have a female equivalent called the Catholic Daughters, but I'm not going to speak much into them. But a lot of the Knights of Columbus are a veteran. It's a very veteran heavy community there. And then I'm also a member of my local VFW. So, um, I do have a sense of stability and community from the veteran standpoint. I do have that. And then opening up to my family has really helped to include them in whatever struggles I'm having, mentally, physically, things like that. This way they know, like, hey, things going on. So don't be afraid to open up to people, but it takes time. It did take me time anyway. So
Yeah, I think that it's a different process for everyone. I've spoken to a lot of spouses of veterans and veterans themselves, and it seems like you have to find, first of all, you have to recognize what your needs are, and then you have to find out what meets those needs because everyone has different needs.
yeah. And like you said, everybody has needs, and it took a while for me to figure out mine. Because I had no idea what I was going to do. When I applied to law school, it was actually applied as a joke. I didn't actually think I was going to get in, but I did, and it kind of flowered from there. So, um, but I had no idea what I wanted to do, because I was in this depressed state where I was like, well, what I wanted to do is taken away from me, kind of not by choice. So, what am I going to do now? And then I was joking around with my wife, and she, you know, I was just joking. And law has always been my go-to field for everything. I've always been a constitutionalist. I've always been a legal person. Like, hey, what did the Supreme Court say about this? And she said something, and I was like, oh yeah, maybe I'll apply to law school. And I wound up doing it, and just kind of as a joke, because I'm like, oh, you see, I'm not going to get in. And then I wound up getting accepted from every school I applied to, and I was like, oh, maybe I will get in. So,
And
um,
you know what? When God has a plan,
he,
even if
he
we're
did he
joking
did have a
around,
plan.
he can make things
And
happen.
yeah, and I didn't know that door was even there. I just kind of it just it was funny. I just
You
applied,
just
and
ran into it.
yeah, I was like, oh well, there it is. Okay, I didn't know I was going to be in this room, but here we go. um,
I feel like God has a sense of humor and we don't always give him enough credit for it.
no, I do agree with that. I mean, just look at the platypus. I mean, why would anybody create that?
Oh my gosh. Yeah, that's so true. The platypus is a special, very special creature. They're so cute though. But wrapping up, if you had to give any advice to anybody who is considering getting in the military, what advice would you give them?
So there's a couple of advice I would give to those that are legacy military people and those that are fresh that have nothing to do with the military at all. Legacy people are those I that are his, you know, you are Navy, your grandfather was Navy, your father was Navy, your Navy, like your legacy. But determine if that is truly what you want to do. Um, so for me, I am a legacy. My grandfather was Army, my dad was Army, my stepdad was Army. So all my uncles, well, everybody that was served was in the Army. So I am definitely a legacy. Legacy I tried to break with the Air Force because I tried to join the Air Force, but that didn't happen because they're like, hey, we'll get you out in a year. And I'm like, I need something now. And so I remember walking out of the Air Force recruiter's office, hooking a left, walking straight into the Army recruiter's office with all my paperwork going, here's my stuff. What do you need? And then the Air Force recruiter came in after me going, what are you doing? I was like, I need something a little bit faster. So, but determine if that's something you want to do. Like, and if you do, don't do it because your family insists you to do it. Don't do it because your friends insist you to do it, and do it because you want to do it. Whatever that reason may be. You don't have to have, a patriotic rah rah mentality. But just make sure it's something you want to do, because if you don't, I guarantee you're going to struggle. You're going to have a hard time with it. And that goes for those that are not legacy as well. If you have an idea of what you want to do, the military probably has a job for you. And I'm not advocating for the Army specifically, although I will advocate for the Army. But um, but any military branch will help you in some way. But the advice I give to everybody is get in shape before basic training. Don't don't wait for basic training to get you in shape, because it will, but it will be immensely harder for you. Second thing is just learn about the military, about the branch you're going into prior to. You don't have to like be an encyclopedia about it, but just learn about it, the history, you know, the processes going forward. Next thing is speak to people that have been in that branch. You don't have to speak to anybody that's been in that particular field that you want to go into, whether it be a mechanic, maintenance, infantry, whatever. But speak to somebody that's done it. Speak to somebody that's been there. Like your husband, myself, any veteran. Just walk in and be like, "Hey, can I pick your brain for a minute? Get advice." And then the fourth, and probably the most important one, is do not mispronounce your drill instructor's name. So I made a mistake of that, and I got hammered hard. So, um, yeah, just don't do that. So,
Okay, so you had mentioned that you're pursuing possibly a little bit more of a social media presence. If
mhm.
people wanted to reach out and contact you, get in touch with you to just ask questions about the military or being a veteran or whatever, what would be the best way for them to do that?
So I do have a YouTube handle, Big G719. Um, don't ask me why I did that name. It just stuck, and I just did it. So you can reach out to me there. I will start posting videos probably in the next couple of months. My videos are going to contain basically just legal analysis of stuff, um, military reviews, and advice for people that are seeking military help, legal reviews of cases that have come up, and then just kind of whatever else happens. I'm going to mainly stick to legal advice and military topics, but I may branch out from time to time. But those are going to be the two things that I focus on. Um, so if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me there, or you can reach me at Facebook, George Moran. Just send me a message just saying, hey, I saw you, and I will send you a friend request, or we can chat there.
Okay. And then Thank you so much for being willing to do this and share those stories. It's especially really important, and that's why I highlight things, especially just the whole month of November. Oftentimes, I think we can overlook veterans, and Veterans Day just really isn't enough sometimes to recognize all of the unique needs and concerns of the veteran community. So thank you for your service. Thank you for being willing to do this interview. And hopefully everything continues to go well with all the projects you are working on.
Well, thank you. And I appreciate you having me on. Anytime you want to have me on, feel free to ask. I have no qualms about expressing my views about the military or anything else, any other topics. But going into Veterans Day, I would like to say thank you to your husband as well. I've known you guys for quite some time, and so those are very good friends of mine. And so thank you to your husband, but especially thank you to you and your family, as well as all military families out there, because while we can overlook veterans, we really tend to overlook the families as well. So I do, Veterans Day to me is not just it's not just a Veterans Day, it's a Veterans Family Day, because we could not do what we do without you guys backing us up. So, I'm pretty sure your husband has can share some stories about seeing some people that just lost it because their family wasn't supporting them as well. So, thank you to the families of the veterans. Thank you to the veterans. And one thing I will leave with is, in my experience, do not be afraid to seek mental help. Do not be afraid of that. I know there's a stigma in the military about it. There's a constant stigma in the military about it. Do not let that stigma get you down. If you feel like you're in need of something, talk to somebody, your chaplain, your priest, your pastor, whatever faith, whatever. If you're not a religious person, talk to a counselor, talk to somebody, but express those feelings, because your feelings are valid, your emotions are valid, and everybody needs help sometimes. So just don't be afraid to talk about it.
It's very true. And I think we're getting better as a military community of being open and honest about those things, but it's definitely something that can always be said and reiterated.
Like I said, and I say that from personal experience, because I've gone through it and I'm still going through it for my PTSD and everything like that. So don't be afraid of it, just because it does help. But I will stipulate this though. You probably will not like your first counselor. You probably won't even like your second counselor. So don't give up. Keep pushing forward. So
Every veteran has said that. Every veteran has said that, and every military spouse has said that about their veteran. Yeah, I that everybody says that, and I think that's true. You're not going to always like your first therapist. Keep looking. If you don't have a good fit, don't quit.
yeah. So I think I went through 4 before I finally found one that I liked. So you're not going to like the first one. Probably won't even like the second one. But yeah.
Thank you. I really wanted to say how grateful I am to George for taking the time to share his experiences, as well as all the other veterans who have participated in this year's series on a veteran. I am actually looking at potentially expanding how frequently I do these interviews, just because of the response I have been getting and the feedback I've been getting from all of you as listeners and from other veterans who seem interested in participating. So we'll see how that goes. I also want to say that please go and check him out on YouTube and his other social medias. They'll be linked in the description below. And going into the holiday season, let's try to be the good we want to see in the world. As always, I'm your host, Sam Wolf, and you've been listening to Life of a Military Wife.